Hi everyone, my name is Noelle Kwong and I am the clinician with the Department of Corrections in District 4.
Yes, hello, my name is Carrie Anderson and I'm the manager of Ada County Misdemeanor Probation.
Adrian Downlook, District 4, Felony Probation and Parole.
So we are here today to answer all your pressing questions about probation. I know you have them. So what is probation, first of all? Probation is a court-ordered sentence that allows a person, instead of being incarcerated, allows them to be out in the community, but with supervision. And on misdemeanor probation, we have a lot of general terms that apply to every single person that's on probation. Some of those terms are: no one on adult misdemeanor probation can drink alcohol. They can't do illegal drugs. They can't leave the state without a travel permit. But in addition to that, each court order might have specific conditions that just apply to that one defendant. So maybe one person might have to complete a thinking errors program while someone else might have to complete a domestic violence program. Parole.
So for parole, this is anyone who's releasing from an IDOC facility. So our parolees which is different from probation, are under the jurisdiction of the Parole Commission. So the Parole Commission, they're the ones that set the requirements that the parolees have to follow once released to custody. The only exception to this are retained jurisdictions or riders. So people who go to an IDOC facility and complete a rider then are released to the community and are supervised by the courts, but we still supervise them on felony probation.
So what does a probation officer do? Well, we kind of have a dual role. On the one hand, we're trying to help individuals address those needs and areas that got them involved in the criminal justice system to begin with. But on the other hand, we're also enforcing a court order. So we're balancing those two roles together. And we're really trying to, like I said, for me, as a probation officer, I really want people to learn what they need to learn to hopefully exit the criminal justice system for good. Like Ms. Gray said earlier, we hope on probation that we never see them again. And it's always great to me, the most inspiring part about being a probation officer is being able to watch people make really hard changes, because change is not an easy thing. We do kind of administrative things like make sure that drug tests are negative and that they're going to treatment as well. And we also provide resources to families when applicable. Misdemeanor probation, most of our work is in the office. However, we do go out in the field and do home visits as well as office visits. It's important to know that Ada County Misdemeanor Probation, and it's different from IDOC, but Ada County Misdemeanor Probation, we have limited business hours. We basically are there 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. We don't have anyone on call at this point, and so we can't respond to emergencies. If there's ever an emergency, we want you to know that you need to call 911. We don't have an on-call probation officer at this time.
So on the other hand, for felony probation and parole, we do have an on-call officer from the hours of 5 p.m. to 8 a.m. on weekdays and 24 hours on the weekends. Of course, with business hours during the weekdays, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. They answer calls from law enforcement whenever someone in law enforcement has a traffic stop or is going to arrest one of our people on supervision. They can answer questions, and the questions can vary across the board, and maybe if there's questions about that, Adrian can speak more on that since he's been on call before. But we do have someone available to answer questions since they are under our supervision. We just want to support law enforcement to help them decide how they're going to move forward with that person. We also have supervisors on call for any staffing problems, and they also support law enforcement and our POs to be able to issue agents warrants.
So when an individual comes in for an office meeting, primarily we're just going to let the offender or the probationer come back without a bunch of people, and this is for officer safety reasons. We do make exceptions to that case by case. Sometimes some individuals need maybe their CBRS worker or someone helping them. We definitely will let interpreters into the meeting, but we just usually don't like a whole entourage of people. So just so you guys are aware. So what to expect during an office visit. So what happens is an individual comes in, that very first meeting is what we call an orientation, where we go over all the rules that they were given in court. So on misdemeanor probation, they went into an agreement with the judge in the court of certain things that they would follow. So we review all those rules because court can be a very stressful day. They don't always read through all their paperwork. So we make sure and go through and read through each of those conditions of supervision. And then their subsequent meeting, we do a risk assessment. We do about an hour interview with the individual and really get to know them and ask a bunch of questions about different areas of their life. And this is what helps us guide their probation and find what are the areas that they're struggling with. And then conversely, also the areas of their life that they're doing well in. We want to build on the strengths they already have. So it's important for us to know both the weaknesses and the strengths. We also discuss what the judge specifically ordered in their case, what classes they may have to do, what fines they need to pay, what restitution. And then all the other meetings, we're kind of doing those quick updates. We want to find out from them, hey, what's been going well since your last meeting? What's maybe not going so well?
When we have our office visits, they're also reviewing, if it's a parolee, the parole commission requirements, so their parole contract that they sign prior to being released. So that's the biggest difference with our office visits, is we do have people on parole as well as probation. Very similarly, we're going over anything that was court ordered by the commission, like treatment, UAs, driver's license suspensions. They are doing a risk assessment, so we have people on caseloads and we do an LSI score to determine if they're high, medium, low supervision. Let's see. They're connecting them with needed resources, so housing is a big one. I know across the board, especially with those releasing from jail, trying to find them appropriate housing can be difficult. So we have a team of people that will work with our POs as well to make sure that they have housing, engaging in treatment, all of those basic needs.
So I just wanted to touch a little bit about the bullet points about sanctions. So probation officers do use incentive and sanctions. So an incentive, we're trying to increase the behavior happening again. A common incentive, if they're doing well, first, verbal praise. Thank you for showing up today. Thank you for getting that class done. And maybe that might entail reducing the amount of times they have to go to UAs, or reducing the amount of times they come and see me, because they don't always love to see me. And a sanction, on the other hand, is when we're trying to decrease the likelihood of that behavior happening again. So sanctions can happen in the office. They might start as low as a verbal warning, but increase all the way up to discretionary jail time, which is when we're taking them into custody for a couple days to hopefully change that behavior. So in Ada County misdemeanor probation, when you come in for an office visit, most of the time we're going to be dressed like you see me today in professional attire of some sort. However, when we go out into the field, we are wearing a uniform, similar to what Adrian's wearing today. Ours will say misdemeanor probation instead of parole, but it's I guess it's pictured here so you can see. We have probation written on the back with khaki pants, and some of our probation officers have outer carriers, some have inner carriers. They will be wearing handcuffs, and some of our officers will have tasers and OC as well, and firearms coming after the beginning of the year.
So the biggest difference for IDOC, felony probation and parole home visits, is our officers are going to be fully armed. So you can see what Adrian is wearing right now until the first of the year. That's the difference. They don't carry a loaded weapon, but our parole officers do.
Let's see if I missed anything. And really, when we're coming to the house, what to expect, we're usually asking who else is in the home. We might have people sit down while we ask the person on probation some questions. Confidentiality, I'll turn that over to Noelle.
Right. So when we have someone call, a family member, a friend, someone trying to get information about someone that we're supervising, whether it be in the facilities or on supervision itself, we can't release information unless there's a release of information signed. We can receive information if there's concerns about someone on supervision, whether they're using, they're committing a new felony, the family member hasn't heard from them, they're not living where they're supposed to, we can receive that information. But we can't provide any information without a public records request being sent in through our website, without an ROI being signed, or unless we have someone that we're supervising there with us, we can make a phone call with them and they can speak about the information that they're wanting to share with a family or a friend.
All right. So where to find us? Does everyone know where the jail is? Ada County Misdemeanor Probation is on that same campus over on Barrister. We are actually entrance 4. Our hours are 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, and our phone number is there. And as far as how often someone comes, that's usually a question. How often do I have to come here? So really, they have a lot of control over that, surprisingly. So if things are going well, it's usually just once a month and even maybe every 60 to 90 days. However, if things are not going well, then it could be as often as once a week. So it does cost money to be on misdemeanor probation. If I ruled the world, that wouldn't be the case, but I don't. So it does cost money. It's $75 a month to be on misdemeanor probation. And so we do, as probation officers, make sure that that is paid along with their court fines. If there's an obstacle in paying that $75 a month fee, then they can talk to their probation officer about that. And what we do is we look at their finance and we can send an affidavit to the court, and the judge can look at it and determine if that individual qualifies for some type of reduction. So ultimately, whether or not that's reduced does not lie in our hands as probation officers, but it does lie with the court and the judge. So my team, we have 12 probation officers right now. We have 10 female officers and 2 males. We have 1 supervisor, she's a female, and then myself. And we have 5 assistants that answer all our phone calls, which is really great. We have about, I looked just yesterday, I think it was 1,298 people, not counting absconders, on supervised probation right now. Our caseload ratios are about 1 probation officer to about 130 people. So those 5 individuals that you see, they pretty much keep us all in line. They answer all the phone calls and try to field as most of those questions that individuals have as much as possible. Oh, it's still me, sorry. Meetings, how do we schedule a meeting? They can come into the office and schedule that. They can call us on the phone. We do give them a business card that has their next meeting. We also have a fancy system that will text them when their meetings are, so that's helpful for people. And also you can just come to our office if there's any problems.
So IDOC Parole and Probation is located on Emerald Street, office hours 8 to 5, and our phone number's there. our probationers and parolees are scheduled office visits based on need. So this could vary from weekly, monthly, quarterly, and can also be lowered to online check-in, which is called LSU, Low Supervision Unit. Cost of supervision, $60 is our cost of supervision, $15 less than misdemeanor. For drug court, mental health court, and vet court, it's only $30 a month. They can pay supervision through the lobby kiosks, access corrections, or money order. So our probation and parolee officers are able to create payment plans to catch up on cost of supervision. You'll find someone who's been on supervision for a while has a pretty large back pay balance. I think I've heard of like up in the thousands owing cost of supervision, maybe more. You might have some cases that's, on the higher end. But they are able to, if they're able to pay 50% of that, a portion will be, the other 50% can be forgiven. We're willing to work with them just to try to get them caught up. And if they're making regular payments, even if they're not able to pay off the full amount, that is still beneficial for them. So we have a pretty large office. It's about 72 parole and probation officers. It goes up and down based on people leaving, as well as hiring new officers. So that's where we fluctuate around. I broke it up into all of the different caseloads that we have. So we have a sex offender caseload, domestic violence caseload, which Adrian's on. We have a gang caseload, we have mental health court, drug court, veterans court. We have a PO stationed at Ada County Jail, the courthouse. We have our limited supervisions unit. We have someone who's at our central office and works with Interstate. And then we also have a PO at GEO, the connection and intervention stations located off Broadway. We have, oh, no, you're good. So we have 6 supervisors so all of the POs are broken up into teams. So 6 supervisors, 16 leads. Adrian's also a lead. 1 deputy district manager, 1 district manager. We also have all of the satellite offices that are listed there, and we have POs stationed at all of those satellite offices. We also house the pre-sentence investigation unit. So after someone is convicted of a felony prior to being sentenced, we have a PSI that's written. We also have P&P specialists. They help the POs when people are checking in. We have Voc Rehab stationed at District 4 P&P. We also have reentry specialists, which is similar to a case manager. And then we have the drug and alcohol team, which is what I'm a part of. We provide assessments as part of the 1925-24 process, provide aftercare for parolees, and just anything substance use related needs in the district.
So why we are all here? How do we access language for individuals that English is not their first language? So at Ada County Misdemeanor Probation, we are responsible for scheduling that interpreter and paying for that interpreter. And we will do so as long as we know that they need one. So usually we get that information either from a court party or one of you all, a helper in the community, calls and says, hey, I'm calling for my cousin who needs help. And we will make sure that there's an interpreter there. We do always prefer that interpreter is there in person. I feel like it just goes easier, it's smoother. We're going over a lot of paperwork, and what happens in a probation meeting is so important, and their freedom can depend on them understanding what's going on. And so that's why we are very, very specific that we want a court-approved interpreter helping them through that process. And me personally, I've just found that in person it really does go better overall. But unfortunately, we do have some languages where that's not an option. We don't have local interpreters. So in those cases, we will use an interpreter via the phone. I'm going the wrong way. Okay, so if sometimes it happens where an interpreter doesn't show up, we don't just cancel the meeting. We know that that individual maybe made some sacrifices to get there that day. Maybe they took an Uber, maybe they had someone bring them. So we will make accommodations in those cases. We will use Language Line or Voyance, one of those services, to go ahead and move forward with the meeting. And it's just important to note that even though, even if the probationer doesn't show up for that meeting, we are required to pay the fee for that as if that whole meeting did occur. So that can be a little troublesome if that happens a lot. Is this still me? So federal funded community providers are required to give interpreters for treatment services. I know historically we've had individuals on probation that they might all speak Swahili. And so in those cases, it's been really nice because we have providers in the community that will actually do groups for them and do a group specifically for that group, which has been super helpful, and they can address some cultural things, and they can get really good treatment that way.
And we're lucky in our office with the amount of people that we do have. Bless you. The amount of people that we do have in our office, we actually have quite a few people who speak different languages. So it's pretty easy for us if we have someone show up and check in who does need an interpreter. We have a variety of people that we can pull from the office. And we will utilize interpreter services if needed, but that really comes in handy with the variety of languages we do have in office. So, any questions?
I'm sorry, but I have a few. So my first question is, do you take transportation issues into consideration if for whatever reason they're late or whatever? I've heard people being terrified about being late or not having the transportation. Is that something you guys take into consideration?
I'll answer for us, and then I'll let Adrian answer for felony. So for misdemeanor probation, that happens sometimes, whether it's traffic or whatnot. And we do if they call. So if they call and let us know, sometimes we can accommodate them being 15 minutes late, half an hour late. However, that's not always the case. If this isn't something that happens all the time and it happens one time, the earth is not going to shatter beneath their feet. Now, when it does become an obstacle, if someone is sitting in my office and they're like, well, I just can't do probation because I just can't ever get there, then what we want to do is help them brainstorm some ways that they can get there and what resources are available to them. We do have some bus passes. We do, there are different transportation methods at times. You know, some people walk, some people ride the bus, some people ride their bike. And so we try to have them brainstorm some solutions to that.
So at the felony level, we do have PMP specialists, and also we have reentry specialists. They work at the prison. So a lot of time they arrange transportation through a mentor to get to the office when they first get released. As far as some other issues that we're seeing, like for example, DUI cases, they don't have a driver's license, and it's really hard to get to the office. So that's why we have satellite offices. So we have an office, for example, in Garden City, and people will go to see the probation officer at the office. We have one in Cuna, and we also have one in McCall. Also, if I get somebody who doesn't have transportation, a lot of time, like for example, I just got a new case, and he just got released from jail, didn't have a vehicle, so the initial contact is going to be on the field. So I'll go in to his house and I'll do the appointment there. and then based on the barriers, I will arrange something. So, and we're very flexible. Like a lot of time I'm out on the field and I get a call and I might not be able to be at the office for that appointment. So at the same time, if somebody doesn't show up, it's not a big deal as long as they don't keep in contact with us. So.
My next question is I'm just curious about this, and this situation did not happen in Ada County, but I'm curious as to see how it would happen here. I used to volunteer at a community center, and several times I had people come in and saying, we were told that I had to come to this training part of my probation here, and here's the flyer, and I'd be like, we don't have any classes scheduled for today. And they would leave. They were terrified. Some of them were juveniles too, and they would call their parents, and they were freaking out. So what happens in that situation to those people? Because really it wasn't their fault that they're not attending these classes that they're required to attend, but there was nothing scheduled at the building where I was volunteering.
With us, there's a situation where classes are being canceled, like if there's a holiday.
So this, again, it wasn't in Ada County. It was in a different county, but people they'd show me the flyer saying, they're having this at the Hispanic Cultural Center, but there was nothing scheduled on our part as far as the Cultural Center to host these classes, but they were told that that's where the classes were. So what happens in that situation? Because they would leave, and rightfully so, they were terrified that they were not fulfilling their probation.
Well, so yeah, we do make referral for clients to go and seek treatment out in the community, but we keep in touch with the community provider. And they usually give us a report every month where sometimes we staff that in person or over the phone. So it's not a big deal if somebody misses an appointment. We usually look to make sure that person is not being discharged because of lack of attendance. And even if they're at risk, we still work with the provider to make sure they get a fair chance. Because if they get discharged, we have to have them restart the program from the beginning. So I believe that you're probably referring to juvenile probation. I believe they're scheduled after us. But I'm not aware of the felony level of any issues like this.
And for Ada County misdemeanor probation, if something like that occurred where I sent them to a class, but then it was canceled or something else happened that was beyond their control, we always give them our email address. And so they can email me and just let me know. And if I have any questions, I might call the center just to clarify what happened. But never is there a knee-jerk reaction of I rush down there, with our patrol officer with lights and sirens to arrest them. We really do try to listen and understand what the circumstances are and figure out what happened.
And I think that just with the culture of probation and parole being a law enforcement agency, there is that ingrained fear of people who are on supervision to be scared that anything goes wrong, they might be going to jail or be sent back to the facilities. And I think we're kind of trying to really break down that barrier and show that, as long as there's communication, we understand that things happen. And even if we're emphasizing that and we're telling our clients that, there's still probably going to be that fear, like, oh my gosh, I missed this class, I'm going back to jail. And that's just really never the case. If it is, it's because it's been happening over and over and over again. So if you do have someone that that comes to you freaking out, that they think they're going to get arrested, like, just emphasize that if they communicate and they're on top of reaching out to their PO, that, more than likely we're willing to work with them. So.
And then my last question is, you mentioned that you show up dressed in full gear. Does this scare little children, young children, when you show up that way?
No, not at all. Actually, it's really fun. We have stickers, and they always want to take pictures. They want to, they want us to tell us what we have on a duty belt. Hardest part is when you try to make an arrest at the residence and there's kids present. I personally never want to put handcuffs on somebody in front of their kid, but it depends on the situation. Like one time I had a guy run from me, and he had the kid on, I believe it was a 10-year-old daughter, was on a four-wheeler, so it was a little bit different because he came back and we didn't know if he had any weapons, so we had to cuff him right away. We already called for help, but if it's a planned arrest, we always call the person outside. Sometimes we go in 2, 3, 4 people. Clients will always tell us ahead of time, hey, my daughter doesn't know much, and we respect that. If I go there and I will, like a lot of time, the kids will ask, why are we here? And they say they're just friends, or they're just coming here to make sure everything is okay. So we, in a situation like this, we never go in and tell them, no, your mom or your dad is on probation. So
I would say ditto to that. We really try to make the whole thing very civilized, very respectful, and engage the kids with stickers and not instill fear.
Does either misdemeanor or felony probation have a check-in at the courthouse anymore? I've seen the name on a door, and we get this question a lot, and I don't know the answer to it.
So the court desk, which will sit next to Dominic, I think he presented earlier. Yes, so we have someone from Ada County they're actually from Stephanie's team. Stephanie, raise your hand. So it's her team. They usually sit there, and right now we don't have anyone filling that spot. But so what they can do when we have someone there is go in and make that initial check-in at the courthouse. And it's basically just filling out a paper, but it does fulfill that requirement that they have to check in with that 24 hours or 48 hours. And so filling out that paper at the court desk, and we get those. And then what we do then is we initiate contact by calling them back.
So we do have an officer. There is a sign for the courthouse. I believe the office is on the 1st or 2nd floor, right when you get out of the elevator. A lot of time he's not in the office because he might be downstairs where people in custody are. So he's just, for example, if somebody gets sentenced and is supposed to report, he will either go there and then he will direct them to our office. We also have a probation officer assigned at Ada County Jail. So if somebody, for example, gets sentenced to probation but has to do another 30 days or 60 days in jail, then the officer at the jailhouse will meet with that person and go over the paperwork. But they do get a paper, and they're supposed to come and report with us. If nobody, I believe there's a sign on the door, if nobody's at that office, they will come to the main office.
Do you have uniform ROI templates available? Or is there an email we can send if we have a request for those forms?
For the release of information?
Yeah.
So everybody that's placed on probation in Idaho, they're required, mostly like on the court orders, you will see some judges will make it clear they have to sign a release of information. So we do have a form initially they sign, but a lot of time it's hard. If we have somebody in a hospital, they will want their own. It's the same with the provider. So it's hard to get forms from everybody, but like, for example, if I send somebody to the hospital where I send somebody for inpatient, I will ask them to sign a release of information for us. But we do have a generic form. Can you be more specific on give me an example on what you would need that form for?
Sure. So in the family law docket, sometimes when parents are negotiating a custody case, one parent will want to know what the other parent's probation or parole status is and if they're being compliant. And so the parent who's on probation or parole will say, I'll sign a release of information so the other parent can feel comfortable that everything's being completed. We just never know how to get the form and where to send it.
Our office doesn't have a release of information for that. We have a release of information that we could talk to anybody. And it's more like a right and need to know. So if there's the client's parents, obviously I will give that information that it's related to them. If it's the victim, that I'll have duty to inform that person if the guy, it's an absconder, for example, or it's violating the no contact order. It's the same with if there are people in the same household and my client is using drugs. A lot of time we're not supposed to release that information, but it is relevant to the people in that house, especially if they're kids. So a lot of time if somebody wants to get some information, I'll probably check with our client, but we don't don't have a specific form. If you do have a form, and we'll have the client sign it.
Yeah, I don't know that we've had that situation. We do have a release of information, but we've never used it in that capacity. But a lot of times, if I can give things straight to the defendant. So if they come to me and say, hey, I have court and my ex-wife wants to know my UAs and my treatment, I can release that to him or her, and then they can provide that info.
And if it's court related, especially with a custody case, you can submit a public records request. It has to be from, an attorney, judge, like someone a part of the case, and they will release like all of their supervision notes or their notes from the facility, how they did in their classes. That is accessible. It just has to go through a formal request, which it's pretty easy to find on the IDOC website.
Awesome. Thank you guys very much.